But for me, in the months since the death of my beloved Philip, I have drawn great comfort from the warmth and affection of the many tributes to his life and work.
Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth have been each other's rock for decades. But Prince Philip made an unexpected choice after 70 years of marriage. He didn't want to live with the Queen anymore. People were confused about what went wrong with this sudden change. Was there more going on here than just a personal decision? The truth was kept hidden for a long time, but now Princess Anne, King Charles, and Prince Andrew have shocked everyone by revealing the true reason their father left. What follows is the hitherto unknown backstory of Prince Philip's decision not to reside in Buckingham Palace with the Queen. The reason Prince Philip did not reside with the Queen was just disclosed by Princess Anne. Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth's only daughter, Princess Anne, has shocked the world with her disclosure. Now that the dust has settled on the long-running mystery surrounding Prince Philip's decision to spend his last years apart from the Queen and Buckingham Palace, the truth may be revealed. The truth behind her father's choice has been revealed by Princess Anne, who is commonly referred to as his favorite, and her brothers, Princes Charles and Andrew, have backed her up in her assertions. We will reveal the complete story soon, so stay tuned. Princess Anne and Prince Philip had a strong friendship, in contrast to the typical formal and aloof royal family interactions. She had a reputation for being her father's daughter due to her outspokenness, abrasiveness, stubbornness, strong will, sarcasm, and humor, which she frequently let folks down. They were both patient with individuals who understood things more rapidly than they did, and took pleasure in making idiots of themselves. Their steadfast devotion nonetheless was the striking feature. Despite their profound affection for one another, Prince Philip and Princess Anne were unable to find fault with one another and instead engaged in humorous criticism. Princess Anne was able to observe her parents' relationship develop over the years. Anne witnessed the reality and understood the meaning behind her parents' flawless smiles and image as a royal pair, while her brothers were busy with their royal responsibilities. And that's not all. Prince Philip told his daughter the truth about the difficulties he had as monarch. But to get to the bottom of Prince Philip's decision to distance himself, we must travel back in time to the very beginning, to the time when Princess Anne and her brothers were even born. At a wedding in 1934, Queen Elizabeth met Prince Philip, the exiled Greek prince, who was formerly known as Princess Elizabeth. He was 13 years old while she was just 8. But it wasn't until after 5 years that they finally clicked. Prince Philip was 18 and Princess Elizabeth 13 when they reconnected. But there were others besides the princess. Dartmouth, Devon is home to Britannia Royal Naval College, where her sister and dad were visiting. Philip was one of the cadets they were supposed to see, but the visit was cut short because of a mumps and chickenpox outbreak. At the headmaster's residence, the young princesses were entertained by Prince Philip, and they skipped out on their chapel service. Among those who escaped the virus's clutches was him. Philip finally went outside and invited the princesses since he was sick of being indoors all day. He instead took up croquet, started leaping over tennis nets, and generally seemed more athletic and carefree. Princess Elizabeth was captivated by this and fell head over heels for it. After that day, she said, she couldn't look at anybody else. During Philip's time fighting in the Royal Navy during the war, the princess formed a deep adolescent love on him after this encounter and started writing letters with him. Elizabeth was so enamored with him that she kept a portrait of him in her room. Prince Philip's romance with Princess Elizabeth flourished after his return from the Pacific Theater in 1946. He asked her to marry him on the grounds of Balmoral in June. According to a letter he sent in 1946, he was spared from the war and saw triumph, had the opportunity to relax and adapt, and had fallen deeply and unconditionally in love, which made all one's personal and even global problems appear trivial and insignificant. Even though King George VI, Queen Elizabeth's father, was asked to marry the princess, he was hesitant. Elizabeth was too young to make a long-term commitment, and he was afraid she may change her mind about Philip if she settled for the first guy she encountered. Thus, the royal family kept mum on Philip's plan to wed Elizabeth. Furthermore, Philip's idea met with considerable opposition from inside the royal family. Many people thought that Philip, Princess Elizabeth's third cousin, was unsuitable for her because he was too rough, unpolished, too German, too Greek, or too un-English, even though he was a direct descendant of Queen Victoria and so a member of the royal family. But Elizabeth would have none of it. She was dead set on marrying Philip. An official declaration of their engagement was not made until July 1947, 1 year after Elizabeth's 21st birthday. Philip was required to become a member of the Church of England and surrender his royal titles from Denmark and Greece before he could marry Elizabeth. Since Philip loved Elizabeth so much, he did this without thinking twice. Even though Philip's baptism was in the Greek Orthodox Church, he was admitted into the Church of England on October 3, 1947, by the Archbishop of Canterbury. A new, more Americanized surname, Mountbatten, was also bestowed to him. At Westminster Abbey in London, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip were wed on November 20, 1947. Afterwards, they spent their honeymoon at Earl Mountbatten's, Philip's estate in Hampshire, England. But Philip had no idea that things were going to shift in ways he could never have predicted. Prince Philip remained a naval officer after his wedding and rose quickly through the ranks. Their first child, a male named Charles, was born a year later, and then they welcomed a girl named Anne. As a result of his successful naval career, Philip was sent to Malta. While the children remained in England, Princess Elizabeth made the journey to be at his side. For a little while they had a very ordinary life, but then their world turned upside down. Their marriage lasted only 5 years before King George VI became sick and passed away in 1952. Everything changed for Elizabeth and Philip. The 25-year-old Elizabeth had to adapt to her new role as queen, while the 30-year-old Philip had to deal with the consequences of his actions. Before Elizabeth became queen, they had hoped to have more freedom to pursue their own interests and have fun, but destiny had other ideas. Elizabeth would soon become queen, while her husband Philip would never become king, but rather live a life of subservience to his more famous wife. Despite everyone's knowledge, this was going to have a major impact on their relationship. His aspirations inside the Royal Navy were dashed when Elizabeth's ascension forced him to relinquish them. Being demoted to a supporting position must have been a shock for a guy accustomed to leading ships. Remember that this was happening in the 1950s, when it was quite unusual for a lady to have more power and influence than her husband. Since Philip's wife was the head of the country, duty took precedence over family, making this situation even more difficult. This set Philip on a path of constant conflict that would last throughout his life and ultimately lead him to choose to live away from the Queen. But what caused it to occur? Stay tuned to discover the difficulties of becoming a king. While on vacation in Kenya, Philip broke the news to Elizabeth that her father had passed away. After Elizabeth learned her role, they returned to the UK without delay. Even though Philip was not proclaimed king consort upon their arrival, his title remained unaltered, and Elizabeth became Queen Elizabeth II. The title of royal consort was instead bestowed upon him. Philip, who left a successful career in the Royal Navy to devote himself to the monarchy, was always there to assist his wife. These alterations, however, were only the beginning. After that, on June 2, 1953, a year after Queen Elizabeth had become queen, they relocated from Clarence House to Buckingham Palace. The coronation ceremony was held at London's Westminster Abbey. Philip, following in the footsteps of the Archbishop of Canterbury, was the first to worship the new queen on her knees and swear eternal devotion to her. Was he really capable of becoming thus, though? It was easier said than done for a male to submit to a woman's power and give up his ambitions and goals in order to back Queen Elizabeth II. Along with his wife, Philip had to get used to walking somewhat behind her in public instead of right next to her. He said afterwards that he had hoped for a lengthy career in the Navy, but that reality set in, and he had to settle for less than his heart desired. Philip sought to make the most of his new situation when he accepted it. Nevertheless, soon after Elizabeth became queen, tensions emerged between her and Philip. Lord Louis Mountbatten, Philip's uncle, caused a stir when he claimed the House of Mountbatten as the new English dynasty. Since Queen Elizabeth was wed, it was thought that her royal offspring would take the surname of her spouse. But Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister, and Elizabeth's grandma, Queen Mary, were against it. They were adamant that the House of Windsor would be the enduring symbol of Queen Elizabeth's and her family's fidelity to her father's legacy. Outraged by this judgment, Philip said he was an amoeba and the only guy in the nation whose offspring couldn't inherit his name. His remarks conveyed his anguish and his fight to find his place in the monarchy and face the difficulties that were ahead. After listening to her husband's remarks, Queen Elizabeth chose to break with convention and make some modifications. The combination of her surname and Prince Philip's surname, Mountbatten-Windsor, was revealed by her in February 1960. Prince Philip assumed the position of royal consort alongside Elizabeth as monarch, albeit his exact duties were unclear. He confided in GES Brander at one point that people frequently assumed he was a refugee spouse. He tried his best, but he was unable to distinguish himself in an institution preoccupied with his wife, and as a result, he remained in the background. Philip said that becoming royal consort was a lot of trial and error for him. Despite not being the first royal consort, he had to deal with problems for which there was no obvious solution. Even Philip himself confessed that no one had a good idea of what the royal family expected of him in his role as consort. Instead, they just looked blank. But Philip knew all too well that his first responsibility was to provide the utmost service to Queen Elizabeth. Like his daughter Princess Anne, Prince Philip was vibrant, determined, and vocal. However, he faithfully executed this. Because he was afraid the monarchy might end up as a museum piece, Prince Philip spent much of his early years working to modernize it. However, he encountered opposition from the old guard who were determined to uphold tradition. Thus, the process was not without its challenges. A great deal of success came from Philip's refusal to budge from his beliefs. Declaring that the coronation of Elizabeth II should not be staged as a theatrical production, he suggested airing the ceremony live on television. The fact that over 20 million people watched the event on television is evidence of his vision. To a certain extent, the monarchy had never been so visibly present before. After around 10 years, Philip and the rest of the royal family let cameras inside their houses, giving the possibility to make a documentary that went behind the scenes. Philip was also the first member of the family to participate in a television interview. Not only that, though, in an effort to reach a wider section of the British people, Philip urged Elizabeth to do away with the archaic tradition of presenting debutantes at court and instead instituted more relaxed social events like garden parties and casual lunches. There was an excessive amount of formality everywhere. Therefore, he wanted to loosen up the royal family and the monarchy by reorganizing and renovating the royal estates. Prince Philip indulged his passions with the extra time he had on his hands and reduced governmental responsibilities. 9 works had been penned by him by the 1980s. He was the first member of the royal family to use a computer, including drafting his own emails and speeches. In 1957, he also showed Elizabeth how to use a teleprompter and urged her to televise her annual Christmas greetings. Curiosity was a virtue that Prince Philip had. It became a running joke in the country because Queen Elizabeth frequently used the phrase "my husband and I" to refer to Philip in her public remarks. However, Philip was more than a ceremonial head. They worked together to overcome the obstacles that the crown presented. While Elizabeth gave him the green light to take charge at home, she gave him little to no say in things pertaining to the state. But there were times, even in public, when he treated her like any other wife. For example, at crucial points during the trip to Cowdray Park, Queen Elizabeth tensed up and gasped for air because Prince Philip was going too fast. When she did it again, Prince Philip finally lost it and threatened to remove her from the car. Despite her title, she kept her cool and made no objections. Nevertheless, there were instances when she displayed her dominance, even in front of her employees. On occasion, she raised her voice and told him to be quiet, prompting him to flee the room in exasperation. Their relationship was full of highs and lows, like any other, but adultery was a common association with Prince Philip. He became the subject of gossip as rumors spread that he was unfaithful, mostly because of his innately flirty personality. In the 1950s, rumors circulated regarding his private life due to his participation in events like as his Gentleman's Lunch Club and his voyages on the royal yacht Britannia. No one ever validated the rumors that he had relationships with a number of women over the years, including a Russian ballerina, an English stage performer, and a writer. Philip was allegedly having an affair with a lady he met frequently at the West End apartment, according to an article published in the Baltimore Sun. The woman's identity was not mentioned. The palace shot down the rumor, denying that he had a falling out with the Queen. Speaking jokingly, Prince Philip asked if anybody had ever seen him go any place without a police escort, hinting that such things would have been impossible. He also addressed the rumors in this way. In her biography of Elizabeth, however, royal biographer Sarah Bradford presented an opposing viewpoint. Philip, she said, had been more circumspect since the alleged affair in the mid-1950s, engaging in flirty behavior only in privileged groups large enough to shield him from the tabloids and paparazzi. No evidence of adultery was ever proven, despite widespread conjecture to the contrary. Rather, Philip's undying affection to Queen Elizabeth has been plain to see. As a suitable preamble to the festivities commemorating their golden wedding anniversary, Queen Elizabeth spoke of him as her rock and stability throughout the years. The Queen and Prince Philip went to a feast given by Lord May, a man they owed more than they could ever repay, on the night before their golden wedding anniversary. Lord May lived in London. As the Queen and Prince Philip continued to commemorate their diamond and platinum wedding anniversaries, she never stopped thanking him for his unfaltering love and support. However, 2017 was a watershed year for their relationship. After more than 7 decades of marriage, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth chose to live apart. Why did they make this choice? Find out by continuing to watch. Separation between the royal couple occurred in May 2017. With this announcement, Prince Philip has decided to withdraw from public life. Prince Philip, wife of Queen Elizabeth II, formally withdrew from public life that evening after 7 decades. Having attended his last royal engagement with the Royal Marines at the age of 96, he did not retire until August 2, 2017. According to a statement issued by Buckingham Palace, the Duke of Edinburgh will no longer participate in public engagements. However, he may opt to attend certain occasions with the Queen, something that happened very seldom due to Prince Philip's involvement in other affairs. Following his retirement, he relocated from Buckingham Palace to Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. This was once the residence of Prince John, the youngest son of King George V and Queen Mary, who suffered from epilepsy and lived in peaceful isolation there with his loyal nurse, Lab Bill, until his untimely death in 1919 at the age of 13. We don't know why Prince Philip made this place his home. Prince Philip expressed his desire to have fun in an interview given in 2011 at the age of 90. However, he did not retire until he was 96 years old. The Queen wholeheartedly supported Philip's choice because she understood his desire for personal space and his history of unwavering support. In spite of Philip's wishes for a quiet visit, he was startled to find a busload of cooks, telephonists, and other staff members waiting for him at Sandringham. Princess Anne ensured that Prince Philip had a good time during his visit. Since he was unable to play polo owing to wrist arthritis, he found a new hobby, carrying others, in the seclusion of Sandringham, which he much liked. Even though he eventually had to quit because he couldn't handle the horses, carriage driving became a way for him to relax. In his spare time, he liked reading, drawing watercolors, and talking to friends about ideas. He liked history more than novels. Philip was a vehicle enthusiast as well, but he was forced to put his passion on hold in January 2019 after being involved in a collision on a major road close to Sandringham. Following an automobile accident in which his SUV overturned, Prince Philip, who is 97 years old and married to Queen Elizabeth, escaped the incident unharmed. Reports indicate that he is doing well this morning. He escaped harm, but the other car's driver and passenger did not. After 3 weeks of apologizing, Philip willingly turned in his driver's license. According to Buckingham Palace, the 97-year-old Duke of Edinburgh has chosen to voluntarily relinquish his license, meaning he is no longer a driver. This was verified today. He was spotted driving around Windsor Castle in April 2019, nevertheless, and he was still permitted to drive on private estates. Unfortunately, our originally planned excursion to Wood Farm ended up taking more time than anticipated. Even though he was officially retired, Philip never set foot in the palace again because he had every intention of keeping himself busy with royal affairs. He preferred the tranquility of Wood Farm Cottage, but his agreement with the Queen meant they would be apart for extended periods of time. Nevertheless, they had regular phone conversations in which they recounted their day, and the Queen and other members of her family frequently paid him visits at Wood Farm. Even though Prince Philip avoided the spotlight for a while, he made an appearance at several significant events, such as the royal wedding of Princess Beatrice, Prince Harry, Lady Gabriella Windsor, and Princess Eugenie in 2018. His old buddies, however, started to fade from his life as time went on. Philip lost 3 friends in a year, and he lost more individuals he knew, including his valet of 40 years. This was one of the costs of living a long life. Despite his deteriorating short-term memory as he drew nearer to 100 years of age, Prince Philip maintained an astonishing level of physical fitness and agility. Though everyone else was giddy with anticipation, Philip was less than thrilled about his upcoming birthday. He despised all the hoopla. Philip went on a world tour as well. Typically, he would be at Windsor for the Easter court, and Queen Elizabeth would have him over to Broadlands on weekends. Balmoral became less enjoyable for him as he got older. He skipped it in 2019 and 2020, instead going back to Wood Farm in 2020. An unexpected turn of events occurred when Prince Charles paid them a visit at Sandringham, accompanied by the Queen. Their visits were brief, though, because the Queen had to return to official affairs. Then the unanticipated COVID-19 pandemic occurred, forcing Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip to move in together. In March of 2020, the lockdown was announced in response to the COVID-19 epidemic. At Windsor, Prince Philip boarded what was jocularly dubbed HMS Bubble with Queen Elizabeth. They maintained contact with relatives through Zoom, and on July 22nd, Philip made an iconic farewell appearance, entering the quadrangle of Windsor Castle to pass the baton to the Duchess of Cornwall as Colonel-in-Chief of the Rifles. He made his final appearance in front of the camera at this event. The couple got the COVID-19 vaccine in January 2021 at Windsor Castle from a house doctor. Still, he felt ill enough to warrant a preventive admission to King Edward VIII Hospital in February 2022. The people was concerned about his welfare, even though he entered without assistance. After a successful cardiac operation and confirmation from Buckingham Palace that he was responding to infection treatment, he was eventually freed. When he got back to his house, everyone started talking about his upcoming centennial, but Philip wasn't exactly looking forward to it, maybe because he knew he wouldn't live that long. With Queen Elizabeth by his side, Prince Philip passed away at the age of 99 on the morning of April 9, 2021, 3 weeks later. Even though he died peacefully, the Queen subsequently acknowledged that he had a profound impact on her life. At St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, Prince Philip was laid to rest on April 17, 2021, with 25 other coffins, including that of George III, interred temporarily. His last will, however, was not read. It was to remain sealed for a minimum of 90 years to safeguard the Queen's honor and dignity, as rumors have it that it may contain content damaging to the royal family's reputation. Princess Anne summed up Prince Philip's impact on her life by saying he was a mentor, friend, and critic. She raved about him and wanted to be just like him, a selfless giver who enjoyed life to the fullest. A defining characteristic of his life was his capacity to treat each person with the respect and dignity they deserved, valuing their unique abilities. She went on to say that he was instrumental in Queen Elizabeth's confidence-inspiring accession to the throne and her subsequent early age of reign. Similarly, Prince Charles paid homage to his father, stating that his father had shown extraordinary commitment to the Queen, the royal family, the nation, and the Commonwealth for the last 70 years. His father's unwavering commitment and incredible vitality in standing by his mother all his life were qualities he really admired. When asked about Prince Philip, Prince Andrew recalled that he was a loving father who treasured his time with his children. I have spoken before of my deep and abiding affection for this wonderful country and of the many happy memories Prince Philip and I always held of our time here. It is often said that it is the people that make a place, and there are few places where this is truer than in Scotland, as we have seen in recent times. Queen Elizabeth spoke of her late husband, Prince Philip, approximately 1 year after his death. Her expressions of longing for Philip and their shared connection to Scotland shone through in her writings. Despite the fact that Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth spent their last years apart, he had an exceptional life and was incredibly supportive of his wife. Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the age of 96 on September 8, 2022, 1 year after he did. She was put to rest in King George II Memorial Chapel next to her cherished husband. They did not part ways even when they died. Do you agree or disagree that Prince Philip should spend his twilight years apart from Queen Elizabeth? Beyond what was already known, do you believe he had any ulterior motives? Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. For more, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Additionally, I highly recommend watching the video that is currently displayed on your screen.